Greetings, Metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today it's the moment of truth. It is possibly the biggest event in any music reviewer or any Metalheads calendar. I am, of course, talking about the albums of the year list, the best albums, the favourite albums, whatever you want to call it, whatever it's titled, the rundown of the best albums of 2023. So this is the No Nonsense Metal Reviews Top Albums of the Year. Once again, I feel like I say this every year, but once again it has been a brilliant year for metal music. We have had so many great albums, so many great bands producing some absolutely fantastic albums and excellent material right across the board. And again, similar case to last year, it proved way too difficult to cram into just 10 albums. I couldn't quite condense it down to just 10 albums. That seemed like way too stressful an experience. So I have gone with the top 15 albums of 2023. So we've actually got 15 albums here to go through. Now, it's important to establish a little bit of a disclaimer, if you like, that this album ranking, this top 15 albums of 2023, is entirely my opinion. This is entirely based on what I have really enjoyed over the year. It's not necessarily going to be the definitive top 15 albums of 2023 because, of course, hey, I'm just one faithful metalhead with my own opinion. So this is the No Nonsense Metal Reviews top 15 albums of the year. You may have a slightly different ranking. You may consider some albums to be better or worse than what I rank them, and that's absolutely fine. The other thing to consider is that just because an album doesn't feature in this list, it doesn't mean that I think it's crap or that it's not worthy of praise and attention. It's just that, hey, I enjoyed some other albums a little bit more. But it was, as I say, an incredibly difficult experience putting this list together, and I have actually been working on this list, the best albums of the year, since September. This has been a long time coming, and I have to say I've enjoyed every minute of it, just revisiting and listening to these albums again and again, putting them in order. You know, I mean, what does it really matter? But hey, it's just an enjoyable experience. So I do hope that you enjoy this ranking of the top 15 albums, studio albums, full-length albums, I should say. No live albums, no EPs, just full-length studio albums from the metal subgenres, right across the board. Although, interestingly, although I've predominantly been listening to a lot of black metal this year, my list, spoilers, is rather disproportionately dominated by death metal. So, more will be revealed momentarily, but here we go. We're going to start off with album number 15. It's from a band that I actually discovered this year. I wasn't familiar with them at all, but I have really been enjoying this album. This is a fairly sort of late entry, as I only acquired it however many weeks ago, maybe a month ago, something like that. But this is Phlebotomized with Clouds of Confusion in at number 15. This is a sterling album. Phlebotomized being a progressive death metal band from Holland. They are a Dutch band. They are also an incredibly good band. I have to say that I've been really impressed with the complexity, but the easily interpretable kind of nature of this album. It has such a gentle flow to it, but do not underestimate the fact this is death metal. This is progressive death metal, tons of amazing keys and atmospherics in there, really kind of deep, passionate, emotive music. But you've also got smashing drums, you've got throat-annihilating gutturals, and you have riffs for days. This is just an absolutely fantastic album, and there's a full review for pretty much all of these albums on the channel. So you can check that out if you want to know a little bit more, but this is a brilliant album. Definitely a must listen for any progressive metal fan, any death metal fan. Check it out. It's got intricacy, but it's also got delightful riffs as well. Tracks that you'll want to pay attention to. Alternate Universe, an absolutely brilliant number. I would say Pillars of Fire, and Bury My Heart Reprise. Just off the top of my head, those are 3 tracks that I would definitely recommend you check out because they are fantastic. So there we have it, number 15, Phlebotomized with Clouds of Confusion. A truly fantastic album. I've been really enjoying that. Listened to it again just the other day. Absolutely, hands down, that's a fantastic album. So, number 14 then. Having a little bit of a change of pace. We're going a lot faster with this one. From Richmond, Virginia, with album number 3, War Remains, from Enforced. Now, Enforced have been making waves in the kind of thrash, crossover, death thrash underground. These guys have been doing really well for themselves. They had an absolutely sterling album out, I believe it was last year, in fact, or maybe the year before that. Recent, anyway. But this being album number 2 properly, because I think their first album was actually more of a sort of a collection of demo material or an EP. Can't quite recall, but War Remains is an absolute ripper. There's strong Slayer vibes throughout, and it sits on that extreme end of thrash, where it's verging on death metal at times, you know, similar to bands like Creator in their earlier days, or, again, Slayer in their more aggressive moments, but this is proper riff-tastic stuff. This is delightful. Absolutely brilliant. Essential for any Creator, Slayer, Testament fan. Definitely going to enjoy this. Brilliant tracks that you need to check out. I would say Hanged by My Hand, the title track War Remains, and Mercy Killing Fields. Tons of great riffs. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Brilliant vocalist in Knox Colby at the helm there. Just a brilliant band. Very capable musicians, very talented musicians. Absolutely ripping thrash. In at number 14, Enforced with War Remains. It's got a great dark cover as well. Really looks the part. Another awesome album, number 14. So then, number 13, we have a legendary band. Absolute legends from Florida, USA. One of the pioneering death metal bands and one of the most distinctive sounding. They have one of the most defining sounds in death metal. Of all the death metal bands, certainly of that US death metal style, I am, of course, talking about Obituary and the great Dying of Everything. In at number 13, absolutely brilliant. A really enjoyable album. To be honest, this is just Obituary. Obituary doing what Obituary do, and that's no bad thing, because Obituary do what they do really well. Play basically classic death metal. Absolutely love Obituary, and I had the great pleasure of seeing Obituary on this particular tour earlier this year in Norwich. Absolutely brilliant show. A fantastic band, a legendary band, with Don, of course, absolutely smashing behind the kit there like an absolute machine. His brother John on vocals. You've got brilliant guitarists in the form of Trevor Perez and Ken Andrews Jr., and then the great legendary Terry Butler on bass. Fantastic musicians right across the board, and this is just solid old school death metal. If you're not familiar with Obituary, I would seriously recommend that you familiarise yourself with the band. If you like bands such as Massacre or Death or Morbid Angel, then this is what you're going to want to be checking out, because this is solid old school death metal. Tracks to check out then. The opening track, Barely Alive, is a real steamroller of a track. You want to check out Without a Conscience, which has some seriously brutal riffing in there. And you'll also want to check out My Will to Live, which is a bit of an interesting one, but a solid track nonetheless. Absolutely brilliant. Obituary, in at number 13, Dying of Everything. So we're keeping death metal for number 12, firmly death metal, with the second full-length album from US, I can't remember if they're from California or not, it's escaped my mind, but US death metalers, Sanguisugabog with Homicidal Ecstasy. Now, I'm saying Sanguisugabog, and I really do hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly, but if I'm not, then you might be able to understand why I'm getting that wrong, because that is certainly an interesting name. I did actually look up once where the name of the album, or where the name of the band came from, And I must admit, I've totally forgotten. But there is a backstory there. The aesthetics here are really creepy. I have to say, it's really quite perverse and weird. It's like a more sort of deviant and grotesque Carcass album cover or artwork. It's just really, really weird. But that said, this is a brilliant album. Sangwa Sagabog, Homicidal Ecstasy, second album, as I say. It's the kind of really heavily groove-infused, groove-laden death metal. The kind of stuff where, you know, it could easily satisfy the tastes of a Doom fan, but it's also brutal. It's brutal, weighty riffs. I'm talking city-leveling riffs, and seriously good freaking riffs as well. Absolutely brilliant album. I've been listening to this one a lot over this year, I have to say. It's just the crushing weight of those riffs, the deep guttural gargling vocals, that thundering low-end bass and percussion absolutely works a charm on tracks like Black Market Vasectomy, Testicular Rot, and Narcissistic Incisions. Yeah, 3 standout tracks there. If you like your brutal death metal and if you like tons of groove in there, you know, somewhere between a band like Cannibal Corpse and a band like Vomit Forth, for example, you know, another young up-and-coming band, but seriously heavy on the groove, then this is definitely what you want to be checking out. Homicidal Ecstasy from Sangwa Sugabog, a great up-and-coming band. They are no doubt going to be one of the new sort of leading bands, I should say, of their death metal subgenre, but also a pioneer of that really ultra dirgy low-end groove death metal. Seriously good stuff. Homicidal Ecstasy in at number 12. A fantastic album indeed. So, a little bit of a change from death metal. We're going black metal, which is probably a little bit underrepresented in this list, but this album has been one of the big standouts for me this year. This is from a band entitled Ruim, and this is Black Royal Spiritism. And I know that I have recently done a little bit of work and talked about this one on the channel. But this is freaking great. Now, if you're a fan of Triptykon, Rotting Christ, Behemoth, if you like your music, your black metal, to be a little bit more than just replicating what Mayhem or Darkthrone have done decades ago, if you like a little bit more atmospherics and darkness and ambience in your black metal, then this is what you want to be checking out. Ruin. It's a 2-man project with a very notable name in the band here. The great Blasphemer, formerly of Mayhem, currently of Aura Noir and Ultimas and various other bands. The guy does seem to do quite a lot. He's on guitars, bass and vocals, and then we have Caesar on drums, or CSR. 2-man project, but seriously good stuff. This is brilliant. And if you are a Mayhem fan or just a fan of Blasphemer, then you'll particularly enjoy the rather excellent re-recording, or effectively a cover, that's included of Mayhem's classic Fall of Seraphs from the Wolfslayer Abyss album, or EP I should say. It's re-recording from that EP, one of the best releases from Mayhem in my opinion. But this is absolutely freaking fantastic. This has all of the darkness and all the depth of bands like Triptykon, of Behemoth at their darkest moments. And I did think of a few other sort of comparisons to this, or to give you like the general idea, but I have consequently forgotten. But if you like it dark, and if you like it atmospheric, the sort of stuff where you can put this on with your headphones, and go out and stand underneath the stars on a cold, frosty, chill night, and just totally submerge into the atmospherics, this is the soundtrack to that. Roem at number 11 with Black Royal Spiritism. I cannot wait to hear what Blasphemer and Co come up with next for that one, because that is an interesting project. Very interesting indeed. So yes, Ruin at number 11. On to number 10 then. So this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. And there's a few albums in the sort of the top 10, if you like, that came out of nowhere for me, that were more recent listens. or albums that I had heard first time around, earlier this year, whenever, and maybe thought they might not even make it into the list. But actually, the more I've listened to it, the higher it's just ranked and ranked and ranked. But in at number 10, we have a new band, but this is their debut album. But some great pedigree here. This is Death Collector with their fantastic debut, Death's Toll. Now this is really a fantastic album. This is absolutely perfect old school UK death metal. Now I say UK, you have got the great Andy Whale on drums, formerly of Memoriam and formerly of Bolt Thrower. Absolutely fantastic and very distinctive drum sound from this guy. Back on drums, back behind the kit. And you also have a very capable vocalist in the form of Kieran Scott. And I can't quite recall the name of the band that he is from off the top of my head. It's just escaped me, but he is a very, very capable and very adept vocalist, death metal vocalist. Some serious gutturals there. That guy's got some serious guts. But this is great. Absolutely brilliant. If you love Bolt Thrower, Memoriam, if you like Cancer, if you like Carcass, if you like UK death metal, particularly more modern sounding death metal as well, the sort of, again, you've got that kind of easily ingestible groove to it. It's got those thunderous riffs, it's got those rolling drums, barrage drums, but it's not overly technical, shall we say, the sort of stuff you can really headbang along to. Then this is an album you need to check out. It's been one that I keep coming back to over the last few weeks. In particular, you've got the brilliant Death's Toll title track that kicks off the album. You've got Death Collector, the band title track, and then you've got the brilliant, heavily Bolt Thrower infused Terrorizer on there as well. An essential for old school death metal fans and fans of barrage drumming and rip-in riffs. Absolutely fantastic. Death's Collector in at number 10 with Death's Toll, their debut album. I very much look forward to hearing what those guys come out with next, I have to say. So, up next, number 9. I can't believe we're up to number 9 already, crikey. But this band is one of my favourite death metal bands, I have to say. Ever since their first album, ever since the first couple of singles that I heard before the first album, which is entitled For the Fallen, this band has been an absolutely reliable powerhouse in the UK death metal scene, with an album coming out pretty much every year or every other at most. I am talking about Memoriam, of course, containing members such as Carl Willits, formerly vocalist of Bolt Thrower, of course, alongside ex-members of Benediction, and you've got the great Scott Fairfax on guitar as well, who is an absolutely phenomenal death metal guitarist. That guy has also contributed to other projects and other bands and things. And then you've got the thunderous Spike T. Smith on drums, who is an absolutely mechanical drummer. That guy is fantastic. We're talking Memoriam, and we're talking album number 5, which is absolutely unbelievable. Amazing artwork. This is Rise to Power. Love this album, I have to say. It's a really strong album. I will say that this album, compared to even the previous album, To the End, is a little bit less aggressive, a little bit less extreme, but not much. But I would say it's definitely a whole lot darker. There's a lot more of a darker nature. Not to say that the first 4 Memoriam albums were an absolute laugh or anything like that. They're dealing with a lot of historical, political, socio-political subjects. Not saying that they were an absolute barrel of laughs, but this album feels dark. And maybe it's the association with the very dark looking album cover there. Not really sure, but it's a dark album, but it's got some brilliant tracks there. Never Forget, Never Again, 6 Million Dead, of course about the Holocaust and the Second World War. Total War, which is an absolute bulldozer of a track, could easily be a Bolt Thrower track, to be honest. And Annihilation's Dawn. Absolutely fantastic. Start to finish, this is essential listening for any Bolt Thrower fan, any Death Collector fan, funnily enough, any Benediction fan, Cancer fan, You know, if you like your old school death metal, Morbid Angel, so on and so forth, then you're definitely going to dig this. This is a brilliant album. I would say that it's probably one of the best Memoriam albums so far. It's certainly grown on me over time, but absolutely superb. Brilliant, brilliant album. Check it out if you like your old school death metal. So number 9, we have Memoriam with Rise to Power. So, in at number 8 then, we have another US death band, or death doom band from California. This is an album, I believe it's their first album in fact, an album that I discovered entirely by chance and have totally fallen in love with. I've been listening to this a lot, and I have talked about this band recently as a band you need to hear. Done the album review as well. I'm talking about Tumulation with Haunted Funeral Creations. Now this album, this is death, doom, darkness. This is brilliant. It's not the kind of death doom of bands like Asphyx. This is certainly dirgy riffs, but it's also got that little bit of a doom kind of groove to it. You can definitely headbang along to this stuff. It's not ultra slow paced or anything like that. It's just heavy, pretty intense stuff. Some absolutely cracking material here. If you like your big old dirgy riffs, you know, the likes that we get with bands such as Incantation, then you're definitely going to enjoy this. Some brilliant tracks in the form of Shattered Under the Eclipse, Astral Sickness, Sterilizing Winds. This is brilliant death doom. Definitely, if you're a fan of bands like Static Abyss and Autopsy, then you're going to appreciate Tumulation. Check them out. Check out Haunted Funeral Creations. As I say, I've done the full review, so you can check that out if you want to know a little bit more. But this is just solid, heavy as hell, dirgy death doom. A great album. In at number 8 there, Tumulation. Number 7 then was an album that came out of absolutely nowhere for me because I picked it up. Of course, you know, I was very excited to hear that this album was coming out. Big fan of this band. Been following them sort of on and off, I would say, for years now. But over the last year, I happened to just coincidentally have been getting back into them in quite a big way. So I was thrilled to hear that Suffocation, the legendary Suffocation, were producing a new album, working on a new album, and have dropped this absolute masterpiece. Now I'm going to try and pronounce this correctly this time, because during the album review itself, which I did recently, a few faithful followers there commented on the fact that, yeah, I was getting it a little bit wrong. But this is entitled Hymns from the Apocrypha. Apocrypha? Apocrypha. Let's just go with that. Apocrypha? Yeah. I think that's right. I'm probably still getting it wrong, but feel free to correct me. Apocrypha? Apocrypha? No. We'll go with Apocrypha. So this, Hymns from the Apocrypha, is absolutely freaking brilliant. I absolutely love this album. Well deserved of a rapid entry right up to number 7. Of course, this is the first album not to feature the great Frank Mullen on vocals, who had been with the band, I presume, practically since the beginning. That guy is a great vocalist, no doubt at all. And what is cool is that Frank does come back to perform vocal duties on the closing track here, which, following in the Suffocation trends and just their way of doing it, they seem to close each album with a re-recording of a track from the Breeding the Spawn album. The second full length, we've got Ignorant Deprivation at the end there, and Frank returns for that. But we have on vocals Ricky Myers, who has been touring with the band for quite some time now, I believe. But he formerly, or still currently, can't quite remember, of another death metal band, Disgorge. He does a monstrous job here. This guy has freaking talent. This is Suffocation at their best, probably the best that I have heard, best Suffocation album that I've heard in a long time. I'm talking sort of back to their classic early era. Absolutely love this album. But tracks that you really need to check out, I mean, the opening track, Hymns from the Apocrypha, Absolutely fantastic. Then you've got Immortal Execration, which is just an absolute bulldozer of a track, freaking monstrous. And Embrace the Suffering. In fact, I'm gonna have to listen to this album again after this, because just reading those track titles just fills you with extreme joy. Absolutely brilliant album. Technical, progressive. There's a lot of complexity here, but you also get some absolutely freaking crushing riffs. I'm talking sledgehammer to the skull sort of stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Definitely an album to check out for any death metal fan, any brutal death, slam fan, whatever. If you like technical metal, technical death metal, Suffocation, the legendary, one of the pioneering bands with hymns from the Apocrypha. I'll get there one day, my friends, do not worry. So, of course, Suffocation in at number 7. Number 6, then. This one is from one of my all-time favourite death metal bands. Now, this band, I think they went on hiatus or they split up, whatever way round it was. They disappeared for, I think it was about 8 years. Now, or at least certainly in recording sense, I think they might have done some shows, some festivals or anniversary things. Not too sure. But this band was back again over the last couple of years and recorded a nice new album. As I say, I love this band, and I was thrilled to hear that the mighty Swedish death metalers Vomitory were back with All Heads Are Gonna Roll. Now, this album is fantastic. Classic Vomitory. This is fast-paced, bruising death metal. It really does sound like Vomitory. Certainly their more recent albums, Carnage Euphoria, kind of onwards. But this is a really solid death metal album. They are a fast death metal band, more akin, in my mind, to some of the US death metal that we get in the likes of Cannibal Corpse, for example. But they also would appeal and appease any fan of Dismember or, classic Entombed as well. They've got that going on. There's a good balance between kind of the US death metal, which tends to be a little bit thrashier, in my opinion, sort of, to speak in general terms, and the classic Scandinavian sound. But this, All Heads Are Gonna Roll, is absolutely fantastic. Thrashing riffs, really nasty guttural vocals, the sort of throat destroying stuff. Absolutely brilliant tracks in the form of the title track, which kicks off the album, All Heads Are Gonna Roll. Then we've got Ode to the Meat Saw, plenty of gore and gruesomeness here, grotesque nature. It fits in with the classic vibes of Vomitory. So yeah, All Heads Are Gonna Roll, Ode to the Meat Saw, and I'd say Dead Man Stalking. All brilliant tracks, definitely ones you want to check out. Essential listening for any Cannibal Corpse, Dismember fan. To be honest, this is just freaking reliable death metal. Any fan of Vader, if you like your fast-paced death metal, kind of thrashing tempo, then you're going to enjoy it. Vomitory in at number 6 with All Heads Are Gonna Roll. Check it out if you fancy a bit of horror-filled, gruesome death. Talking of horror-filled, gruesome death, that leads us in quite nicely to album number 5. So this one is a band that I discovered this year, in fact, earlier this year, and I am really digging these guys. I'm really into this stuff. They've got 2 full-length albums and a few other odds and sods in their catalogue so far. This year, 2023, saw the release of the second album. This is from Celestial Sanctuary, and this is entitled Insatiable Thirst for Torment, which I have here on CD, and also, just to show off, I have a very cool little cassette form as well, with a nice red tape shell, courtesy of Church Road Records. Ta-da! Very cool, very, very old school style. But you know what? This is a freaking great album. Celestial Sanctuary from the UK, from Cambridge, in fact. Brilliant UK death metal band. Absolutely brilliant. Really kind of leading the way in this country. We don't exactly have the most prolific death metal scene in terms of the more mainstream, I guess, but or mainstream death metal. But I would say that we have some brilliant death metal bands in the underground, and Celestial Sanctuary are definitely right up there as being one of the best, one of the real standouts at the minute for me. Absolutely fantastic. Tracks that you absolutely need to check out if you need convincing. Trapped Within the Rank Membrane. Just that song alone justifies their position at number 5. The frickin' weight of those riffs and the kind of spectral stance on the vocals, kind of set back a little bit. It's not right at the forefront in your face, set back a little bit, and it's just provides the kind of gloomy atmospheric over the top. Glutted with chunder, and well, pretty much the whole album, but if I'm just going to pick 3, Swivel-Eyed and Gurning in the Shadows. Absolutely freaking brilliant. If you like, I'm going to say old school death metal, but of course done in modern, a little bit more of a modern style. Heavy on the grooves, heavy on the kind of, without being death doom, you've got those kind of doomy, dirgy vibes there as well. Again, I think it brings bands like Incantation to mind as well. Just freaking great stuff. Absolutely. If you like Incantation and Autopsy, whatever, if you like your more modern death metal in the form of bands like, I don't know, Blood Incantation, Grave Miasma, whatever, Celestial Sanctuary are definitely a band you freaking need to hear. In fact, there is a band you need to hear recommendation review on them, which I've done not that long ago, that you can check out. But Insatiable Thirst for Torment is such a strong album. This is not this kind of album that you would expect to be number 2 from a band. You would expect it to be, you know, album number 4 or 5 and well into a 10 plus year career. Nope. Album number 2 from a brilliant standout in the UK death metal scene. I honestly would implore you to check this album out and check out their first album, Soul Diminished, as well, which is also a brilliant album. And also catch them on the road. Support your UK death metal. So in at number 5, we have Celestial Sanctuary with Insatiable Thirst for Torment. Check it out. Freaking great death metal. Essential stuff. Now it gets interesting. Down to the top 4. It gets even more interesting. I know you're already gripped, but interesting in terms of the fact that these albums could probably be interchangeable at this point, depending on my mood. But falling in at number 4, this is the second album from the side project, I suppose, or the spin-off from Autopsy mastermind Chris Reifert, drums and vocals, and Greg Wilkinson, also of Autopsy, on bass and guitars. This is the mighty Static Abyss with Aborted from Reality. Now, this is actually album number 3 out of 4 albums released from Greg and Chris between 2022 and 2023. We've had 2 Autopsy albums, and we've also had 2 Static Abyss albums. That's an exceptional rate of working. And Static Abyss are on fine form here. This is like, I guess it's like a doomier, darker version of Autopsy. And of course, you know, I hate to say it, it is a different band, but the fact that you've got Chris on vocals and drums, and you've got Greg on guitars and bass, there is a certain similarity. There is a resonance with Autopsy. Of course there is. Let's get that out of the way. That said, there are distinct differences, being one of the main ones being that this is far doomier, in my opinion. And it's also far darker. And I think it also sounds a little bit kind of rougher, a little bit rawer. It sounds freaking great. This is an absolutely fantastic album, packed with great Death Doom tracks in the form of Aborted from Reality, Worm Skinned, which is so freaking, oh, it's proper like skin crawling stuff. It's really dark. It's really chilling. The absolutely doomy masterpiece, Cathedral of Vomit, which is disgusting but amazing. And also, I think I'd have to mention the absolutely brilliant Unrepentant Mutant Serpent. Absolutely brilliant album. Really good. If you like Autopsy, yes, you're going to enjoy this. But if you like your really kind of doomy, dark death metal, if you like Grave Miasma, I know I've just mentioned them, or Tomb Mold, whatever, you're definitely going to appreciate this particular album. Aborted from Reality. Labyrinth of Veins was the debut album from last year, and that was high up in my album ranking from 2022. But this tops that album. Definitely. This is a absolutely superb album. Check it out and check out those tracks mentioned. If you like Autopsy, definitely, and if you just like good old Death Doom. So number 4, Static Abyss with Aborted from Reality, an absolutely freaking essential listen. Number 3 then, the band that I've just alluded to. I couldn't ignore this band, of course, from this very high position. Although this album hasn't been out that long, it rocketed up to number 3 in my album ranking. This is the legendary Autopsy, California death metal band, old school death metal band, heavy on the doom, of course, but this is Ashes, Organs, Blood and Crypts. The second full length from Autopsy in 2 years. This is freaking amazing. I absolutely love this album. The moment I put it on for the first time, I knew that there was no contesting a high spot in the album ranking for this album. Bulldozing forth in doomy, very kind of Sabbath-infused doom death style. Rabid Funeral sets the precedent very high. Then we got Throat Sore, which is definitely faster paced, more ripping track. And Well of Entrails. Those are the kind of ones that you really need to check out. Well of Entrails being a pretty dark, doomy, dirgy track indeed. But this is just start to finish absolutely fantastic. Chris Reifert, the man himself, the man, the myth, the legend, sounds on top form here. He sounds monstrous, as he does on the Static Abyss album, of course. But he sounds absolutely bestial here. Fantastic drummer as well. Alongside the great Chris, we've got the brilliant guitar duo of Eric Cutler, legend, and Danny Corrales. Absolutely fantastic. Those guys together make a seriously formidable death metal force. Alongside Greg Wilkinson, previously mentioned there. Fantastic bassist, very capable. That's what I love about Autopsy. It's got a very clear, prominent bass. It's very dirgy. You've got that heavy, weighty percussion. But you've also got really interesting, textured, layered riffing going on. Absolutely brilliant. Check out this album. It's, in my opinion, it's even better than last year's Morbidity Triumphant. And I didn't think I'd say that because that album was freaking great. Let's just hope that Autopsy keep up the pace, keep up the quality, because I'm ready to hear more from this legendary US death metal band, one of the true greats. In at number 3, Ashes, Organs, Blood and Crypts from Autopsy. So now we are down to the wire here. This is where it gets really, really difficult. And these two albums, number 1 and number 2, you really could interchange them. Because in fact number 2 was number 1 last week, and the week before that it was the other way around, and another way around, and it just keeps cycling. Every time I listen to these two albums, they keep kind of stealing each other's spot. So these two albums, bear in mind, they probably could interchange quite easily, but for the moment this is where we are at, and these two albums happen to be from legendary bands within their subgenres, and I absolutely love them both. So, number 2, legendary Norwegian black metal godfathers, given the answer away already, with their latest full-length, War Against All. Now, this album is freaking amazing. I absolutely love this album. This album, I believe that it was actually delayed in its original release. I think it was due to be released last year, but actually for whatever reason it ended up being pushed back to 2023. But this is amazing. I absolutely love this album. I love Immortal. I'm a big fan, not just of this album, but and the more recent albums that we've had from just Demonaz, basically Demonaz being the mastermind. So we've had this album and Northern Chaos Gods as well previously. But I love the Abath era, you know, I love the early stuff. I love the more accessible period as well, the more kind of death infused period. I love Immortal, is basically what I'm trying to say. And I had high expectations for this one, and it did not and does not disappoint. War Against All is a black metal force to be reckoned with. It combines those frosty, cold riffs that we know and love Immortal for with more traditional kind of heavy metal groove and melody, plenty of melody in there, melodicism, but also plenty of kind of ambience and soundscaping and atmospherics, just a lot of beauty in their music. We kick off with two pretty thunderous, bruising black metal tracks, War Against All, the title track, and Thunders of Darkness, two absolutely brilliant tracks, before we get a really groovy melodic track, more traditional heavy metal track in War God, which is absolutely fantastic. Demonaz's riffs are brilliant. He's a fantastic guitarist, there's no doubt about that. But then we get real highlights, such as Return to Cold, which is absolutely one of the most frostbitten, chilling black metal tracks that I have heard in a long time. Certainly one of the best black metal tracks I've heard this year. Absolutely love it. And then we've got Immortal, the title track, which is very interesting. That's actually after Nordlandia, which is a rather long instrumental piece, which is absolutely brilliant. Certainly a very, very good track. And a fantastic closer in Blasharek, My Throne. Absolutely chilling, haunting stuff, but fantastic. Demonaz, a brilliant guitarist, a brilliant musician, and also a very, very good vocalist as well, I must say. Very, very good indeed. Just a really top-notch album. This is Immortal, just as strong, in my opinion, as they are on albums like At the Heart of Winter or Pure Holocaust. And I know that some people would think that's absolutely blasphemy to say that. You know, I've got all of the Immortal albums, pretty much all of them on CD and vinyl. I think I've even got some tapes as well. You know, I am a true fan of Immortal, and I am putting my reputation on the line to say that War Against All is just as good as any of the Abath era albums, just as good as Northern Chaos Gods. This is one of the best albums of the year, without a doubt, and it's one of the best black metal albums I've heard in a long time. Check out War Against All, check out War God, and check out Return to Cold. Absolutely stunning stuff. Absolutely fantastic. Number 2, Immortal, War Against All. So that leaves number 1, my favourite album of 2023. And to be honest, this, alongside War Against All, have pretty much been at number 1 or number 2 the entire time that I've been working on this list. This album is currently my favourite album from this band. They are a band that I have only really gotten into over the last couple of years. I had the great pleasure of seeing this band live headlining Incineration Fest in London earlier this year. And this album is an absolute beauty. I am talking about Heimdall, from Norwegian black metal / Viking metal / folk metal / prog metal / metal / heavy metal, whatever you want to call them, just freaking Enslaved. This is the legendary Enslaved with Heimdall. This album is an absolute masterpiece. I freaking love this album. Number 1, my favourite album of 2023, Heimdall from Enslaved. Hearing them play 4 out of the 7 tracks on this album live was insane, I have to say. I know that we had Forest Dweller, Kingdom, Heimdall, I think we might have even had Congelia as well. Start to finish, this is a glorious album. Really good. Now, I would say that this is very progressive, definitely. This is progressive metal, progressive black metal though, because I would argue that there is a quite sizable black metal influence, you know, from the early years of Enslaved, where they were more of a, not conventional black metal band, but they were more easily recognizable as being black or Viking metal. There is a resonance of that there. Not so much in the opening track, Behind the Mirror, which is absolutely stunning. It's atmospheric, it's ambient, it's beautiful. But certainly in Congelia, the second track, in those drums, that's far more akin, that kind of intro, if you like, the first part of the song, far more black metal in nature. Forest Dweller is an absolute stunner as well. Absolutely brilliant stuff. Brutal absolutely sounds on top form here on bass and vocals. Really does, his voice just totally fits the music perfectly. His really aggressive vocals, you know, he's got that more conventional black metal vocal style. But we also do have vocal contributions from Ivor Sandoy, and we have Hakon Vinny on keys and backing vocals as well. So, you know, there's a little bit of kind of clean vocal contribution as well in there. And that really works on tracks, certainly tracks like The Eternal Sea, Caravans to the Outer World, and Heimdall. Start to finish, this is an absolutely glorious album. And of course, I have done the full review earlier this year, so you can check that out. But The Eternal Sea is my personal favourite track on this album. So atmospheric. So it's a heavy song, no doubt at all. Amazing guitar work on this album. The drumming is fantastic. The keys are brilliant. And I know that not everyone's a big fan of keys. Certainly not in their heavy music, which is fine. But this is more of a progressive album than it is a black metal album. Which is interesting, because by and large, I would not consider myself to be a progressive metal fan or a prog metal fan, but this is stunning, absolutely brilliant. Eternal Sea, Caravans to the Outer World is just amazing. It's totally out there. It's really encapsulating stuff. You can really kind of lose yourself in a track like that. And Heimdall, the brilliant, brilliant closing title track, absolutely fantastic. Certainly that chorus, you know, just absolutely brilliant. But it's heavy. This is a heavy album. Number 1, The Great Enslaved, Norwegian Legends with Heimdall. Absolutely brilliant album. Number 1. So there you have it. That is the No Nonsense Metal Reviews, or my top 15 albums of 2023. Please do feel free to share your thoughts and opinions on this one. Do feel free to share your album rankings. You know, how did you rank your albums of this year? Have we got any similarities, any in common? Very interested to hear, of course. But please do be mindful. As I said at the beginning of this video, this review, this is my opinion. You are welcome to disagree, but let's keep this civilized, because we're all brethren of the metal here. Let's keep this tame, keep this PG. But thanks for watching, my friends. Now, also, I will just mention that there are a few albums that you may notice are missing from this list, and that is because either I haven't got around to listening to them yet. For example, I've literally still got in the shrink wrap the new Dying Fetus album. I've got the new KK's Priest album here, and I've also got the new Cattle Decap album, which I haven't yet listened to. I also haven't got a copy of the new Cannibal Corpse album because it's way too expensive to justify. So if an album is missing, it might be because I haven't actually heard it yet. But we've had it, the top 15 albums of No Nonsense Metal Reviews. Just to recap, in at number 15 was Phlebotomized with Clouds of Confusion. Then at number 14, we had Enforced with War Remains. An absolutely brilliant album. If you love riffs, then you want to wrap your ears around that one. Then we had number 13, Obituary, Dying of Everything. Sanguisugabog with Homicidal Ecstasies at number 12. Ruin, Black Royal Spiritism, number 11. Number 10, Death Collector with Death's Toll. Number 9, we have Memoriam with, of course, Rise to Power. Number 8, we've got Tumulation with Haunted Funeral Creations. Number 7, we have Suffocation with Hymns to the Apocrypha. Vomitory in at number 6 with All Heads Are Gonna Roll. Number 5, we've got Celestial Sanctuary with Insatiable Thirst for Torment. Number 4, Static Abyss with Aborted from Reality. Number 3, Autopsy, Ashes, Organs, Blood and Crypts. Number 2, War Against All from Immortal. And number 1, Enslaved with Heimdall. So there you have it, my friends. Do feel free to share your rankings. Do feel free to share your thoughts and opinions. Please do feel free to like and subscribe, of course. Very much appreciated. Thanks for all your support over this year. Very much appreciated. We're generating a real following here. Awesome. Thanks for watching, my friends. Check back soon for more reviews and recommendations. Above all, my friends, have a good remainder of the year and an even better, more metal 2024. Take care of yourselves, my friends, and stay heavy.